Welcome to Vision to Venture. I'm Eddie, and I'm here to uncover the realities of scaling and building a tech startup. Each week, I speak to leaders within the tech space with their insights and advice on how to found, fund, and frame a tech startup. So make sure to follow and subscribe to never miss an episode. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Vision to Venture. Today, I'm joined by Misha Sulpova, VP of Artificial Intelligence Product at Cherre. From his background in art to pioneering AI solutions, Misha's journey is as fascinating as it is inspiring. Misha, hey, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing very well, thank you very much. So yeah, just getting into it. Your journey into the tech industry is obviously quite unique with a background in art. How do you feel your artistic background has influenced your approach to product management and building machine learning products?
Yeah, it's actually incredibly useful, and I found that there's a lot of folks that are in highly technical or strategic roles that have some component of that kind of creative expression in their background, and I think there's a couple of things to it. I think that underlying anybody that kind of goes down that art path, there's really two characteristics. And one is they want to build things that inspire them. And two, they're willing to sometimes sacrifice practicality for imagination.
Okay, yeah,
And
fair.
that's very useful when you're talking about new technology because it sometimes involves a leap of faith in imagining the art of the possible and challenging your own uh, preconceived notions around what something can and can't do.
All right, yeah, that makes sense. And so your background also obviously spans both technical and business. So from data science to product management, how do you balance these sort of different skill sets in your role?
Yeah, I think the key to remember a couple of years back, I should say, dating myself 10 years back, Gartner was out there publishing articles that sound, and I forget the exact statistic, 93% of models don't get to production, that kind of thing. Uh, that was an epidemic inside of the data science world, and it came from two challenges. One was models sometimes were good but solved the wrong problem, and the second challenge was an execution challenge. But it's the first that product background, helps immensely with. Uh, where when we're talking about data science or AI, we want to be talking about solving problems first
Yeah.
and solutioning second. And we want to try our hardest to not overcomplicate things. So if you need a dashboard or a histogram and it answers the question, don't build a model. And that's a hard thing to do if the thing you're passionate about and love is building AI solutions. So that product discipline is immensely helpful on the one hand. On
Mhm.
the other hand, uh, the things you learn on the product management side in terms of execution, what it takes to get products to market and how to apply agile specifically towards disciplines like AI and data science is particularly helpful. And so in my career, the two things that I've spent my time doing is making sure we're solving the right problem and making sure we're applying agile in an appropriate way to maximize the potential for success
Mhm.
uh, in terms of bringing AI products or models to market.
Right, yeah. That makes total sense. And so just speaking of that, obviously being in your role and being where you have been in Cherry, would you say that there's any advice that you would be able to give to individuals out there that are looking to make a similar sort of transition into product management or any kind of AI roles, especially if they sort of come from a non-technical background?
Yeah, I think the key is to make sure you're doing it for the right reason,
Yeah,
and that you have a passion and a genuine interest in it. Um, the antithesis of that is if you're not passionate about solving a business problem and you're in a data science role, it's you're not going to be as successful as somebody that wants to solve a business problem. The same thing is true on the product side. Here's what I'll say too about product. If you want to be a product manager, just don't. And it's a very hard role, and it's in that, right, you're always going to be disappointing somebody.
okay,
We do it because we have to do it. It's that kind of entrepreneurial desire
yeah,
to to take on value delivery in a very different way. But I see some folks with technical backgrounds trying to make the transition into product because they're working with product managers. What they see from their product management partners is, okay, I get to write tickets. I don't have to write the code. I get to set priorities, and boy, isn't that fun. And they're not seeing the opposite side of that, which is the thing that's feeding that, right, is I've got to understand the market, and I got to understand the clients, and I've got to understand my stakeholders, and I've got to balance all of these competing needs. And again, I'm going to disappoint people along the way. Uh, and and then I've got to make sure that I can execute. And as an engineer, that means being very cognizant about not solutioning with your engineering teams, because that's the temptation. Uh, and all of that takes a lot of discipline and patience, and a lot of balance.
yeah.
And a lot of folks that make it into product from engineering that I've seen do that transition end up going back.
When you originally got into the sort of product management roles, was that the path that you knew that you wanted to go down, or was it just sort of something that you stumbled across?
When I started on the product management path, I don't think we had a name for it as an industry. I think
I feel like the names in this industry, like job titles, change so much. It's
it's
so
crazy.
hard to keep up with them because then they start merging like seven different job titles into one and call it just something completely new. And I'm like, what is that though? And they're like, well, it's this, and this all in one. That makes no sense. So yeah, I get that. I can believe that there wasn't a job title for it at the time. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, it was a fun story. What had happened is I was actually working on a branding project. So we had a branding business. It was a career builder at the time. We were growing at breakneck speed, and the branding business was responsible for putting job skins, client brand on top of jobs. You know what? Uh, the teams that were executing this, we had retention issues. Back then, the way that and we were doing some of this offshore, and the way that the labor markets were back then, it's very hard to keep anybody more than 6 months because they were looking for career growth, and we were just doing HTML and kind of basic stuff. So uh, what what I ended up doing is we figured out how to hack the branding platform a little bit and start
Right.
to inject JavaScript and more interesting kind of flexibility into it. And we're able to give folks on these teams a path to upskill themselves. And by accident, we built a product that made us a bunch of money. So again,
Happy
completely by accident.
accident.
But the intention was to create career pathing and retention, really, for people to be able to practice their skill set. and create some growth opportunities. But that first product role, it wasn't formally called product. I think the title was operations manager or something like that. But
Right.
it was
Yeah.
inside of an innovation team. It was just brand new, spun up, and it was greenfield development of these prototypes that we were trying to bring to market. And these were like tiger teams of it was me and like four other people that at the time we were trying to do agile right, and it was completely wrong. Everybody was reporting to me, both the engineers and the business folks, and we were deploying these solutions into the industry very quickly to test out whether or not they had legs.
Right.
That was, the kind of first product management lesson for me. One of the really fun projects that came out of that was, and one that's particularly memorable was deploying educational solutions into the federal prison system that had no internet. So we were building the software on top of Linux servers, and then I was traveling to different prisons and installing them
Oh,
into the
wow.
prison infrastructure.
Wow. Interesting. So you
Yeah,
went to a lot of prisons.
went to a lot of, yeah, and it was like 3 years into my career. It was fascinating.
So you've launched 3 AI products and productized service at Cherry.
Right.
Could you walk us through sort of the process of idea developing and bringing these products to market?
Yeah, so Cherry is particularly interesting in that it operates a little bit like a B2B firm, like an enterprise B2B
Okay.
firm,
Yeah.
in that the clients that are using the solutions are expecting, enterprise software, level flexibility,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
on the one hand. On the other hand, the makeup of the real estate space tends to kind of fall into a couple of buckets. There's folks that make decisions around buying assets, dispositioning assets, improving assets, those kind of things. Those teams tend to be fairly small, and the time they have to work with software tends to be very short. Uh, so they don't have a lot of time to learn a bunch of new software, right?
Mhm.
Um, on the flip side of that, there's the operations teams that are responsible for driving better margins, driving growth, that kind of thing. The products we've been launching into market from a ML and AI perspective have been around the decision science. And the decision science itself, give you specifics like what markets do I buy in? Um, when I buy, what do I end up building? How do I think about what's going to happen to my cash flows in the future? That exists on that decision science space. And so the couple of things we've learned is uh, most folks have already developed a mental model for how they think about these decisions. And it's not enough to think about things in terms of enterprise software flexibility. There's also a component where we have to bring in some of that thought process and so to speak, that secret sauce, and then apply it to the models that they're going to be using, and make sure that it's unique to them. And so that creates a unique situation a little bit where we have the product as a category, and then the way clients deploy it, it's very specific to them, even more so than the way you would think about configuring enterprise software. I don't think that actually answered your question, though.
I mean, I mean, it did enough. But this probably will help as well. This next one, how would you then ensure AI projects are not just sort of technically impressive, but also deliver significant outcomes to customers and the business?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's
So
a
what's tightening
couple of
you up then?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I think need to happen. One is, like, I spoke to this, you got to make sure you're solving the right problem,
Hmm.
and that means you've got to be applying good product management practices. Hey, do you understand um, what the issues are? Have you talked to the stakeholders, etc.? You've
Right,
got to
yeah.
make sure you're executing correctly, and it's worth talking about that execution piece a little bit because it's unique in the context of building models and building AI solutions, because really what you're dealing with there is de-risking. You're not necessarily dealing with compartmentalizing delivery. And then there's the adoption, and that's
Mhm.
the other bit that I don't think we've talked about yet. Uh, it's what I was alluding to before. Uh, Solving the problem is not enough. If your uh, problem is I need to be able to select which market I deploy capital into,
Mhm.
to build, say, multifamilies or to build single family homes or something like that. And then I've got to figure out what kind of product type to build and what's going to go in it, right? The people that are making that set of decisions actually has to be willing to adopt it, which means trust. So that trust is either developed, and depending on how many people use it, right? If you're talking about a consumer product, it's got to be developed in mass, which means you've got to think a lot about user experience. You've got to think a lot about adoption patterns and statistical gating, and how you deploy different levels of accuracy in your models, those kind of things. With very small groups that are making very high impact decisions, which is where Cherre plays. It's making sure that we're doing a couple of things. We're speaking the language, the folks using the systems, and we're involving the thought processes and decisions from the folks using those systems in deploying those solutions. And the tools I use to do that are a few fold, right? It's building collaboration with the business into the process as we deploy, and utilizing a ton of design thinking, because that
Mm.
process as a whole shortcuts, uh, making sure you're you know getting the stakeholder perception
Mhm.
captured in an expedient and efficient way, and then being able to incorporate it in a group context, rather than having a prolonged, almost consulting like engagement, which uh, obviously takes time, and it's time that folks don't always have.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like everything in the tech world, there's always that one element of time that causes issues, and it's just like there's deadlines, and then there's like certain sort of criteria that you need to meet before so and so happens, and there's always that problem, isn't there? There's always that issue, and it's just time. There's never enough. We just need more of it. And how so building on like your experience at IBM and other organizations, how do you sort of approach the challenge of driving AI adoption and innovation within larger enterprises?
I rely on that design phase quite heavily, and in terms of uncovering need. I also think, especially at this point in time, we're in sort of Gen AI world now. It's very hard to tease out when somebody's talking about AI. Are you talking about AI as a category, which includes, in my mind, machine learning and data science and things that use structured data to make decisions, or unstructured data in structured ways? Or are you talking about Gen AI? This.
I mean, yeah, and Gen AI as well, because obviously Gen AI is obviously it wasn't big. What about 3 years
That's
ago?
right.
Now it's just
Although it was around for a long time, right? It's
yeah,
not new. It's just gotten good recently. Uh,
popular exactly.
so I
Going
think
up.
at this point, and it's both exciting and a bit of a pivot point, right? It's
Mhm.
important to think about strategy. And before, what that meant when we talked about AI ML strategy was, what's the technical strategy in deploying solutions that use data science? At this point, I think it's so much bigger than that. It's at a C level, at a board level. how do you think about what AI is going to do to your business?
Yeah.
Right. And that means taking that higher level view, not just of like how do we embed something into a product, but what does it do to all of the different pillars of our business? How is service going to be different? Are there going to be tools that are adopted? How do people use the Gen AI tools that are available? What are risks coming in from external factors, right? Are my competitors going to invest in AI firms or lean into AI in a way that's going to put me at risk? What's going to happen at the market level? And taking that view, I think it's important that, especially industries that are exposed, and there's some that are exposed more than others, but ultimately every industry is going to be exposed to the need here. When you look at that strategically, it means working with every business unit, working with every layer of the business unit to be able to understand and prioritize where the opportunities to deploy AI solutions exists. And so at that executive strategy level, right, understanding the frameworks there will let you hone in on the risks. And then you're going to find that at the department and team level, there's going to be a pull, especially now. And that hasn't always been the case, but now there's a lot more eagerness, I think, to say, okay, well, I want to try to, maybe operationalize some conversational AI for customer care, or I want to try to operationalize some acceleration of my sales and marketing pipelines through Gen AI automation, or I want to be able to, have better risk management through, deploying models that look at, let's say, credit risk or something like that. So that, I think, is where you start.
And so in terms of strategies, have you found sort of the most effective in overcoming like resistance or skepticism towards AI technologies? Like, what are the best strategies that are effective in those areas?
So I think it comes back to that de-risking point I made earlier, and the way you deploy AI solutions. So once you've figured out what you actually want to do and where the most value is going to come from, and you do this on paper, and you do this through conversations, and you do this through looking at the market and talking to your organization, the there's always kind of that build by analysis, and you're looking for where can I go to solve that problem where I don't have to overcomplicate things. I don't have to build. That definitely provides some de-risking. You got to think about what you're good at and what you want to be good at. What are the capabilities? If you're a builder, or if you're like a construction firm, right, you don't necessarily need to be good at marketing. So buy that solution. You don't have to worry about it. But what you do want to be good at is maybe controlling cost, or maybe site selection, or something like that, right? In that context, you may want to develop those capabilities, and it's easy to, jump in and try to build something out. And by the time you're sort of done with it, it either does work or it doesn't work, or maybe it takes longer than you expected. Uh, planning the work so you're front loading the most risky parts of the model, or you're front loading the most risky parts of the solution, and you're doing that in a time boxed way, is essential in making sure you don't spend, 3 years compiling data and trying to build a model just to find out that it's A, not possible because the data's not there, or B, because you've approached it the wrong way and you're solving the wrong problem, or that problem's no longer relevant.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, fair enough. Now, I just wanted to steer away from all of that for a second. You've got an upcoming book,
I
right?
do.
And it sounds really intriguing. So I just wanted to talk about that for a second. Could you give us like a sneak peek into what readers can expect from your book, and sort of how does the book tie into your experiences in the tech industry and sort of what motivated you to write it?
Yeah, absolutely. So uh, the book deals with uh, again the process of de-risking
Okay.
what it means to get a product to market, an AI product to market specifically. It drills into that strategy layer, how to break down the problems in an enterprise into its logical parts and how to apply AI frameworks to it, and then how to execute those frameworks so that you can actually get some of these things to market. And that means identifying those success criteria early, forming teams, forming processes that maximize the opportunity to deliver. I don't have a date set for this yet, but
Okay.
the my blog Wired Cognition, I will absolutely be posting um, updates as we get a little bit closer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
isn't what the release date hasn't been set?
that's right.
Okay. But it's coming? What,
It's coming.
this year, I assume.
That's right.
Good. All right, that's brilliant. Well, there you go. Well, when it is out, I'll be sure to be looking out for that. And I'll be posting it everywhere. And so what sort of, yeah, what was it that motivated you to make this book and sort of share all of these experiences and all of this information? Was it like just a burning desire to help other people out? Was it just to like talk about your own experiences?
No, I think there's so much opportunity out there
Yeah.
to improve what we're doing with better data science, with better machine learning, with AI,
Hmm.
to do it in a responsible way, to do it in a
Okay.
thoughtful way, and to develop a baseline competency for how to think about these technologies. And this is in the perspective of the business, right? Not
Hmm.
necessarily a technical perspective. Like that kind of literacy is essential. And the tools we have at our disposal that we've developed, and they're phenomenal tools, things like agile, things like the way we build software today, uh, are really good starting points. But it's easy to pick up those tools, not adapt them, and try to use them and fail. And so the question I'm trying to answer is, how do you take the tools that we have in our toolbox, adapt them to something that uh, is appropriate for uh, getting solutions to market that solve real problems,
Hmm.
that utilize some of this technology? And how do we do that through elevating the amount of literacy that we have in the risks that these solutions pose, but also the opportunities they pose, how to appropriately uh, organize the deployment of these solutions, how to identify where to prioritize investment into these solutions, and how to ultimately see them maximize their ability to drive returns for your organizations, your clients, your customers. This is something I've seen be an issue again and again over the last 10 years. And so um, it's a book I wish I would have had when I was starting down this journey. And so it's
Oh,
just a
nice. So it's
matter
just
of
like
getting it on paper.
all those people just starting out and getting into their sort of technical career, and it would just be a little guidebook, I guess.
Yeah, and again, less technical and really more for that kind of business literacy. But I should say that also things have changed so much in the last year or
And
two.
they always do.
And
They always will.
so the new bits of it, right? I started working on this a while ago. The new bits of it have to do with that strategy layer, because honestly, before we weren't having board level AI conversations. These were technical execution conversations.
Hmm.
So, that's the pivot we're making here, and we're in the first inning.
Of course. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, I'm looking forward for that to come out, and when it does, I'll be sure to be sharing it everywhere. Um, And just finally, to wrap things up, just for this final question, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting their career in the tech industry, or they're looking to transition into roles focused on AI and product management? Is there what would you have liked to hear? Obviously, I know you saying that you wish you sort of had this book, but say it was like at the start of your career, is there anything that you would have liked to have heard before you got into everything that you're doing now?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things that are important to acknowledge. AI is going to change every industry
Yeah, of course.
and the way we do most things. And in the service of that understanding, I think it's essential for folks to have a very high level, uh, basic literacy on how both ML and data science models work and how large language models work.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think the sooner you acquire that, the better. And I think this is true. Again, I'm biased here, but I think this is true for everybody. It
Yeah.
doesn't take a lot. I think it's finding something that some kind of content, some kind of somebody that can walk you through it, reading the book, walk you through what you need to know about um, how these things work on the one hand. On the other hand, the way AI roles are going to look in the future is not entirely clear to me. I think this is going to be a ever evolving space. And
Absolutely, yeah.
it's one of those things where, like, let's take large language models, for example. Large language models are actually not AI innovations, right? They're language innovations.
Yeah.
So what that means is if you're talking about designing prompts to accomplish a goal, the skill set that makes you uh, best equipped to do that is not a technical skill set. It might be uh, a set of reasoning or the ability to apply reasoning
Mm-hmm.
that helps you be successful, but the types of folks that might write the best prompts or might be able to implement the best large language model solutions might be folks with linguistic backgrounds or philosophy backgrounds.
Yeah. Okay. Got you.
And that's something we're going to have to wrap our heads around. I remember in business school, uh, I was looking at career opportunities and I was looking at consulting as an option. And the dean of the business school had been a partner at a large firm, and I was picking his brain. And I said, what do I need to read to position myself to be effective in this space if I go into this consulting space? And he said Dostoevsky. And
Okay.
That's the kind of thinking I think we need to remember, is that to be effective at operating a large language model
Yeah.
is not necessarily going to be the things that made us successful at data science. Now,
Yeah.
fast forward, I think there are some very tactical and practical things that we're going to have to face. And that's, how do you measure quality? And how do you measure risk and responsibility, especially around deploying Gen AI solutions? And so that's going to take a level of intuition around how you test outcomes, and certainly I think statistics, even though you can accomplish so much and go so far with some of the open source solutions that are out there, having a kind of baseline understanding, intuitive understanding of statistics and probabilities and these kind of things, what underlines good experiments, is essential for wherever you go in this space in terms of AI, ML, whatever it is, right? And it may seem obvious, but there's a lot of folks that are great at deploying technical solutions that don't really have an intuitive grasp of that. The other piece is understand the domain in which you work. If you're working in finance, understand the way finance works, economics works. If you're working in advertising, understand consumer behavior. So understand that domain, be able to speak the language of that domain, and ask questions around how the data that's driving that domain is collected and deployed. And then finally, from a technical toolkit perspective, there's, I think, going to be a need for a couple of things: connecting solutions together, integrating them to make sure that they work, and scaling them. And those are slightly different skill sets. Those skill sets are going to be portable. So for folks that are looking at machine learning engineering, that kind of thing, data engineering, right? Some of those skill sets are portable, and it's easy to make that jump from engineering or DevOps or something like that into some of those roles.
Right.
But if you want to do it successfully,
Of course,
you understand the
no,
other
exactly.
aspects too.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that's still it's all what you're saying about, like, obviously large language models as well. They're just a part of something so big and so broad. Knowing, like, that's that one thing. I feel like there are so many different paths that you can go down in, like, data science and AI, and that obviously being one of them. But there's just so many different routes, but they all sort of stem from the same place, I guess, and they all sort of stem from all having, like, the same sort of base knowledge, and then just branching out into all these different areas. Obviously, you've got, like, the product management side of things, and you've got the NLP, the computer vision, and all these different areas. I can't comprehend how anybody would choose what path to go down, because there's so many, obviously, and you've gone down the product management route. It baffles me, but I admire it, and I think it is very, very interesting. So hats off to you. And thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I feel like I've learned a lot personally. So I'm hoping our viewers will also learn a lot from you, Misha. So I really appreciate everything that you've shared with me today. And yeah, I wish you all the best, and Cherre as well. All the best. And I look forward to seeing your book get released. And when it does, I'll be sure to spread the word.
Thank you very much, Eddie. I appreciate it.
No worries at all. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Vision to Venture. If you're listening, make sure to give us a 5-star review. And if you're watching, like and subscribe to listen to more inspiring stories from leaders in the tech space.